I'm Idiotech, and today I'm going to review the Next Penelope Race to Odysseus. So what is this game? Essentially, it's a retro racing game, similar to games like F-Zero or Micro Machines. The developer heavily references Micro Machines and states several times on his early access page and his website that this game is influenced by that game. So, if you haven't played those games, it's like a top-down, old-school racer with very, very simplistic controls. But he's added a lot of modern twists, like modern game mechanics, and a really, really cool art style. So, the first thing I like to talk about in my reviews is technical issues. So, I had no problems downloading and installing this game. I've had 0 bugs and 0 crashes. Pretty much perfect in that regard. So, there's not much else to talk about, so we'll just move on to user interface and menus. So, the user interface and menus for the most part are really, really good. The user interface in particular is actually quite good. In terms of options though, there's not much here. Now, it's a 2D game, so you can't really expect too much, but I would have really, really liked resolution options, for example. That would have been really good. I think it's kind of needed in all video games, to be honest. But yeah, the graphical settings here, they are bare bones to say the least. But then again, it is a 2D game. So low, high, and very high. Now the difference here is that very high is just high, but it has this cool perspective effect. Now, I don't really mind it, but it does have some impact for me personally on gameplay. Basically what it is, and I will demonstrate this when we get into the game, but basically what it is the game's 2D and it's rendered like, if you imagine like a piece of paper, it's a plane. Basically you just render that plane at a 45-degree angle. Now what the developer's done is, because when you do that, what happens is the edges of the plane will be black, or whatever the background color is. And so what the developer's done is they've added UI elements to sort of hide that fact. And for me, it detracts. I feel like I can't see the whole map properly, even though it really doesn't have much impact. I just don't like it personally when I'm racing and I'm trying to focus. It sort of impacts my gameplay personally, but it's very personal choice here. So give it a try, see which one you like. I will demonstrate it though. We have full screen and windowed, and we have some additional language options that are currently work in progress. French and English currently. As for controls, the game offers keyboard and keyboard support and controller support. It does recommend that you play the game with a controller, although I don't really see why, because the controller utilizes digital inputs, so the D-pad and the triggers, and the keyboard does the same. So basically, to control the ship or car or whatever it's supposed to be, you press left and right on the D-pad, which they're digital inputs, so it's the same as pressing the arrow keys on the keyboard. So I see no problem there, and I've tried the keyboard and the controller, and they're basically the same for me. So if you do just own a keyboard, this game's not going to be a problem for you in that regard. You should be fine. Although I would have liked to see some rebinding options. So I'll just jump into the game, and I'll show you some of the user interface. Now, when you first jump into the game, you'll be sort of forced to do this easy section over here, and then you'll be dumped out into this galaxy map type level selection screen. And for the most part, this looks really nice. I mean, it's a nice way of presenting, you know, level selection. It didn't have to be this way. It could have just been done in a boring menu, but I do appreciate the effort that was been put in here to making it look nice and allowing you to sort of fly around in your ship and navigate. So it looks nice. It's got this sort of parallax effect. These rocks are in front of me, and then these rocks are some of them, I'm sure, if I can find one. These rocks, come on, yeah, they're behind me. So it's a parallax effect. If you don't know what that is, basically you just render some objects in front of the player and some objects behind the player in 3D space, and you get this cool sort of parallax effect is what it's called. So that looks really nice, and the levels themselves look really, really nice. So I'll jump in quickly, and then we can show you some of what the game looks like, graphics and art style, and some of the user interface stuff. Now, be pre-warned, this game, I find it very difficult, and we'll get into that later, but don't expect me to play this well, especially when talking to you. So, it'll load up a challenge. Oh, actually, I shouldn't have picked this one. Oh well, it doesn't matter. It'll load up a challenge. So, I'll explain some of the game mechanics, but not in too much detail. I'll get to that later. But just from a graphics perspective, so it hasn't saved my preferences, and this is one bug actually that seems to have shown its head during the review. I tried to save my preferences here to high, and it seems to have switched it back to very high. So there is one bug that I've found so far, but I can just switch that during the game. So in perspective mode, which I'll just show you quickly here, you'll see that it's sort of rendered on an angle. It looks almost 3D, which is pretty impressive considering it is just a 2D game with sprites. but you'll also be able to see these grey sort of bars on the side, and I find that kind of distracting and irritating, so I just switch back to high, and it will just give me straight top down, and those bars will be gone. So that's really cool. So yeah, this is what the game looks like. I'll get into mechanics and stuff later, but yeah, this is what it looks like. So the user interface, you've got this energy bar in the top right hand corner, which is very, very important for gameplay. That's very easy to read, and it's important that you can read that. I'm dead. Well, that wasn't helpful for showing you off the graphics. Wasn't paying attention. I'll just jump in again. So this is sort of a tutorial, this level. It's not indicative of the actual racing mechanics. Yeah, so this is what it looks like. I think it's really nice. It's really loud, really colorful. You know, it's the kind of thing I'd expect from a retro, modern retro sort of game. And there's a lot of distinction between all the different levels. You know, this is just one aesthetic. Lots of levels have completely different sort of looks to them. I mean, they are all just driving around on a track, but they look very different. This one's in space, you've got some in the desert, one over a pool of lava. So it's really cool. It's nice and diverse. God, I'm terrible at this game. It's nice and diverse, lots of nice colors. It's very vibrant. I personally really, really love the aesthetic of this game. You know, yeah, it could have been cooler if it was in 3D or whatever with that perspective thing, but really, I don't think it would have added that much. The game looks really good, and I can't control it very well. So that's basically what the graphics look like. I'll just back out of this. So yeah, for the most part, it looks really, really nice. I have no complaints whatsoever. And at this point, I should probably mention that this game was created by a single person. He's been developing the game for 2 years, and he has done all the sound, all the music, and all of the graphics, as well as all of the code. He uses a sort of pre-built engine, which focuses sort of on ease of use code, sort of, you know, what you see is what you get kind of stuff. But, I mean, the fact that he was able to achieve this game with it is astounding and great, and, you know, a testament to how good that engine is and how good a developer he is. So, yeah, it's quite amazing that he's managed to achieve all this on his own. And I just wanted to state that because it's something that people maybe don't think about with indie games, you know, how many people are actually working on them. But, yeah. So, the graphics and art style, really, really happy with it. Think it looks great. In terms of sound, the music is really well done as well. Like, really well produced. For the most part, really nice. Sometimes I feel that it doesn't necessarily fit with the sort of theme. I'd sometimes like a more sort of upbeat, sort of really, really sort of fast-paced sort of soundtrack that gets me excited for the mode. And sometimes it seems a bit more relaxed than maybe it should. But for the most part, it's nice music. It's well written. It's well produced. It sounds, for the most part, really, really great. It may not be to everyone's taste, but it's not particularly offensive or anything. Yeah. The only thing I would say is that it's not hugely memorable either. Like, there are some sort of retro-style games. There was a game called Shattered that came out a few years ago. I referenced this recently in another review I made. Had a really, really distinct soundtrack. You'd go away after that humming that for hours. I even bought the soundtrack. I thought it was that good. So it could have been like that, you know, but I don't know. It would have been, it could be better, but it's certainly not bad, and I think, to be honest, it's quite impressive. Sound design is also good. There's a lot of feedback, you know, you get a lot of audio feedback in terms of, like, I've just blown up a guy, I'm being shot at right now, I've just used my boost. Everything in terms of sound design works really well and is themed well towards the game. I think overall sound and music are also great. So graphics, sound, music, also all fantastic. The story and the game modes. So the story in this is based around Homer's Odyssey and Greek mythology, except it's kind of a sci-fi take on it. And to be honest, there's not very much of it. In fact, there's very minimal amounts. But between each level, like when you first start up a zone, I'll call these areas on the map zones. When you first start up a zone in single player, you get sort of this story of Penelope, who's our hero, and she's doing some things that don't really make very much sense. The story really is kind of a bit contrived. I don't really follow it very much, and after I saw a few cutscenes, I just honestly started skipping them. I think the purpose of the story is to serve as a thematic point for these boss fights. You know, over here you fight a minotaur, you know, and stuff, and I think that's what it's there for. It's there as theme, it's there as, you know, sort of a bit of background ambience. But I honestly feel like it's kind of lost, and I think a lot of people won't even understand the reference to Greek mythology. I'm not sure it's something that large numbers of people know about. Maybe I'm wrong. So it's kind of falls flat, to be honest, and it's unnecessary, and it may have been smarter to spend time elsewhere. You know, not every game needs to have a context for why you're doing what you're doing. You know, racing a car fast and using cool explosion-y things and dropping mines on people and using hooks. sometimes that's enough, you know? So I didn't feel the story added much to the game. But it's presented reasonably well through little cutscenes. I'll see if I can actually show them to you. I'm not sure that I can.
Good luck.
Maybe I can. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So if I haven't completed it, I can show you. So this is what they look like. You know, it's a nice hand-drawn background. Cool little slightly animated hand-drawn character there. And, you know, some text. That's what it is, you know? And it doesn't make much sense to me. But, you know, what can you do? It's presented reasonably well, though. I'll just skip that. Yeah, and these screens as well. These are part of tutorialization. They're telling you how a mechanic works and stuff. That works fine. All the mechanics are very, very clear. Very, very well explained. So no complaints there. And now I will back out of this game. So, yeah, the key thing here, for me, the key problem that I have... Okay, that bug's back. It's not saving my settings. The key problem I have is with the game design and the game modes. So, the game modes on offer here are a single-player sort of story-based experience and 4-player local co-op. But the 4-player local co-op isn't in yet because it's early access and that's a feature that still has to be put in. So I'll start with that before I get into the story and main game mode because that's where I have most of my complaints. So with 4-player co-op, I'm not really sure why that's being included in a PC title. I mean, sure, it's nice to have extra options, and the developer has stated that he's currently developing the game for Wii U and potentially other consoles, and I think it would work really well on Wii U, but on a PC, I don't know many people who own 3 Xbox controllers, and I don't know many people who actually play local co-op games with their friends on their PC. PC is kind of a solitary activity, and if you do play with other people, you tend to play online. Now, I can understand from a production standpoint that putting online into your game, especially as an indie developer, especially as a solo indie developer, is probably not feasible. And I can understand why it's absent here. But it would be nice to have, you know, it would be nice to maybe pick up a copy for me and my friend and set up a private lobby and just have some races. That would be really, really fun and cool to do. But, you know, I can understand why it's not there. But I don't really understand the point of including it in a PC game, and honestly I think the energy put into that could be focused on the single player. And so this is the crux of the problem I have with this game, is this single player experience. Now, what's here is really good, and I like it, aside from some issues with the controls, which I'll touch on in a second, but for the most part, what's here is really good. Distinct, nice maps, cool mechanics, like some really, really nice mechanics that are fun, and they add, so you unlock one and you get to keep it, and you unlock the next one and you get to keep it, and that's really cool. But in terms of content, there's really not that much here, and in terms of difficulty, there is some serious problems. So I'll just explain how this works, because I'm not sure that I have yet. Basically, I want to pick this level here very hard. So I pick this one, and I can't do these two. I have to complete this part first. And that will be a tutorial explaining to me the mechanics. So in this one, we'll just jump in and we'll skip this cutscene. Right? So in this one, I get a harpoon. And the goal of this sort of tutorial mission here is to shoot a bunch of little bug things with my harpoon. I'll just change that back to high. Shoot a bunch of bug things with my harpoon and catch them and put them in this bucket thing that I'm carrying. So there's one. And they drop, if I scare them, they'll drop mines and I'll get blown up. So I drive around, I find the bugs, there's a little arrow telling me where to go. Oh, don't crash into things. And there's no more arrow, and I shoot the bugs. And it's just teaching me how to use the harpoon, right? So that's basically how this works. And so you'll do a little tutorial, I'll just back out of this. You do a little tutorial, and then once you've done the tutorial, you go into a race, and that race will utilize the mechanics. So in this one, for example, you get vampiric mines, and they restore your energy bar. And just to explain that, the way this game works mechanically, basically, is you drive around, you have an energy bar, you expend that energy bar to perform special actions, such as drop mines, shoot your little gun, boost, use the grappling hook, teleport, etc., etc., and I'll show you all those things in a minute when we jump into a race. And that expends your energy, but your energy is also your health, your life bar. So when it gets to 0, you die, and you also take damage, and that reduces your energy. So you have to micromanage your energy bar as you play. You know, you'll need to drop a mine, that will expend your energy bar, but the mine, if it does kill someone, will give you your energy back. There are some pads you can go on that give you your energy back. It's a nice mechanic, and it works really well with these sort of special abilities that you have. So that's really cool. So once you've done that little tutorial, you jump into a race, and then once you've done that, you jump into a boss fight, and then you're done. And then you get XP, which you can spend in here, which I'll show you in a second. And then you move on to the next one. And it starts off with easy, there's 2 mediums, there's 2 very hards, and there's an impossible mode. And that's it. And that's kind of a big issue for me, because even though I can't beat these because of difficulty, which is another separate issue, that's it. So if you're really, really good at this, you could finish it in like an hour and a half, and there's not much else for you to do. And if you're really bad at this, then you're going to get no value because it's really, really difficult. So I'll talk about difficulty in a second, but the main issue I have here is that there isn't much. And it would have been really, really, really nice to see an additional mode similar to that of other racing games, which is just straight up racing, you know, maybe 10 maps, and they all use the mechanics differently. They all have like unique, cool map designs that force you to use things in different ways, etc., etc. And you race against standard AI, and you try and come first, second, or third. And if you get first, you get a, you know, certain kind of trophy, and second and third. And you go through and you try and get first for all of them, and an additional setting for difficulty. If that was in the game, then I think it would be a lot better. As it stands, once you've beaten this, there's nothing left to do other than these little extras, which I'm not even sure are in the game yet. If they are, you have to unlock them by completing the main story. But they're just like, you know, little time trials and stuff. They're not exciting. I mean, what this game really needs from a content perspective is to have this mode, a story mode that's maybe a little bit easier, and a sort of core just standard racing mode. And this isn't racing. What they look like races, but they're very directed, scripted experiences that are designed to get you to use that certain mechanic. It feels like a tutorial. It feels like a very, very hard tutorial, but it feels like a tutorial. I'm learning here how to use mines. I fight a boss and utilize the mines. And then over here, it's, okay, I use the teleport so I don't fall off ledges and stuff on a map. And then I race with that, and then I fight a boss using that. You see, that feels like tutorialization, which is usually how it's done in a story like this. It feels like tutorialization. And then you go, once you know how to play the game, then you go and do the races. And that doesn't exist. It just does not exist in this game. It feels completely lacking of any content after this story stuff. And this story stuff feels like a big tutorial. So this is my issue. And this is all there is in the game, and this is apparently all the developers planning to put in the game. And it seems to me, and as I was saying earlier, the developer is, it's just one person. It seems to me that that limitation has resulted in this problem. And that problem is essentially, there isn't enough content, and so what's happened is that the difficulty has been sort of used as a barrier to experiencing that content, right? So it's a skill equals value transaction, essentially. If you're really good at this game, you get to experience all the content. If you're really bad at this game, you might not even be able to beat medium levels, right? And therefore, what do you get for your money? For $10, you beat the easy bit, and then you can't beat mediums, and then you get frustrated and you leave. Or if you're really good at the game, you'll blast through it in like an hour, you know? And then, what do you do then? You know, there's nothing left. And that's where the game falls down for me, and difficulty. And the reason it's difficult, you may be like, well, why is it so difficult? I'll jump into a race here and I'll just show you.
Good luck.
Okay, so I'm just doing the mine stuff, and I'll show you a boss fight as well.
Get ready.
So in this, I don't have any energy, right? Well, I do, but it doesn't refill. I've got to change this again. It doesn't refill, right? So if I use my guns, my energy will go down. I don't get any weapons for the first lap of the race. But if I use my gun, my energy will go down, and there's no way to replenish it other than to use my mines. So it's forcing me to use mines, and teaching me how to use them and all that. And that's what it feels like. It feels like you're teaching me how to use a cool mechanic, and then I never have to sort of use it again, you know? It's kind of strange. But yeah, so I race around here, I fight these guys. These guys, by the way, they're always in the positions they're in. So they get a boost at the beginning. You may have noticed that I started last, and the pink guy is always the first guy I overtake. So it's sort of scripted that these guys will always be in the positions that they're in, which again doesn't make it feel like a real race. It feels like a sort of scripted, tutorialized sequence. I should probably start using my boosts to try and get around here. So you can see I can shoot this guy, so that's one of my abilities I can use. And you may be saying, well, what's difficult about this? What's difficult about it is the fact that you have to actually use these mechanics. I'm first right now because I just shot that guy, right? That's kind of uncommon. Here he comes. I'll try and drop a mine. I'll try and drop a mine to knock him out of the way. There we go, and I'll get some energy. Nope. Okay, that guy's got him first now. Sorry, it's difficult to play this game and talk about the mechanics of it at the same time. You kind of need to focus on it. I'm saying an awful lot. Whew. Okay, so it's difficult because it's very fast-paced, number one. Number two, the mechanics are absolutely necessary to complete the level. And number three is the controls. The controls are not precise. The controls are digital. If I hold left, it will turn for the period in which I'm holding the button at a set rate. If I hold right, same thing. If I hold it for less time, I'll turn like a smaller amount. And that doesn't feel precise enough for me personally. Now, I have played this game a lot. I'm still bashing into walls. I just did then. And it does not feel precise. You know, I really struggled with the controls at first when I played this game, like a significant amount. It took me a long time to sort of get used to that very old school digital input thing. And I understand that it's an old school retro, like throwback type of game, but really, I mean, we have analog sticks now, and if you're going to say the game's best experienced on controller, then the analog stick really should be a part of that, you know? I mean, this does not feel in any way precise. And for a racing game that involves, you know, pretty precise turning, that's a problem, and it leads to frustration. And there you go, I didn't get first place, so I don't win, so I don't get to progress to the boss fight. And so it is difficult to sort of demonstrate why this is difficult, but once you get into the sort of harder stuff, there's so many mechanics you have to keep in mind. You've got the boosts, you've got the guns, you've got teleporting, all that stuff, and then you have to be incredibly precise with your turning. If you turn poorly, you go into some kind of device that kills you, or you run into another player and start bouncing all over the place. You have to be incredibly precise with your controls, and the controls themselves are not precise. So I found that very frustrating. Also, the boss battles can be significantly challenging. It's tuned to be a difficult game. The mechanics are difficult to execute perfectly. The requirements for completing a stage require you to be like very perfect, use the mechanics well, etc., etc. So it is a difficult game. Other people have reported that it's a difficult game. It just is, and that feels like the design of this game. It's that whole arcade style game. There's not much here, but what is here is hard, and so it will take you a long time to progress through it. And I just personally, and it may just be a personal taste thing, I don't find that particularly acceptable in 2015 as a mechanic. You know, there are games, roguelike games, they're throwbacks to old hard games, but a game like Rogue Legacy, for example, will be very difficult, and you'll die a lot, but every time you die, you get to keep some of that progression, the money or whatever, and you get to upgrade your tower, your castle, and buy upgraded weapons, and your ancestor gets all that stuff. So you're still progressing even if you're failing, and in this it's just you're failing, so now do it again. And honestly, it may just be that we've all been trained to be casuals, or that I'm just a casual these days, but I find that really, really frustrating. I've tried to do this one. The furthest I've ever gotten on this one, I think I got to the boss once and died, and I just got frustrated and quit. And then over here, I couldn't get past the race phase. I think that's correct. Yeah, I couldn't get past the race phase on this one. I don't know how I would even begin to do impossible. I did try it. You don't get to use your weapons at all in that. So they train you to use your weapons, and then you don't get to use them. And that's it. That's the end of the game. So it's a difficulty / content issue. It's like there's not much content, so we made it really, really hard to slow down how quickly you get through the content. Versus there's lots of content, and we provided you with lots of difficulty modes to suit everyone, so everyone can enjoy the content. It's a design philosophy issue, right? And it may be intentional that the developer chose this, but I personally feel that if the developer did choose this, just purely because that's the kind of game he wanted to make, then that's fine, and this game just isn't for me. And if you're not into these super niche hard games, then it probably isn't for you either. But if it's because of time, or because he wasn't able to create enough content due to the fact that he's like one guy, and so the difficulty is there as a sort of artificial barrier to progression, then I don't think it's really okay. And for me, it's definitely not okay. It may be for you. So yeah, I don't know. I find it too difficult. It frustrates me. For anyone worse than me, at video games, they're barely going to get any value out of this at all. And for anyone better than me, they're just going to burn through it really, really fast, and there's not really anything to do. So, in terms of game design, the controls, they really could have done with being more tight, more precise, and, you know, not digital. In terms of the level designs and stuff, they're all fine. It's just tuned too difficult for me anyway, and probably for a lot of people. It's too difficult. And the content, it would have been really nice to have just like a Mario Kart 8 style thing where there was just 10 maps and you could play them at different difficulties and everyone could get something fun out of the game. And that would also add a ton of replayability, because once this is done, all you've got some time trials, you know? Whereas trying to get like, you know, 3 stars on every race would have been fun. And honestly, like for a game that's a racing game, you know, you spend like a third of your time racing, which is odd. And I'll show you these boss battles quickly before I jump on, and then I'll show you the XP. So we'll just jump into a boss battle. This boss battle is actually pretty cool. I really, really like it. I'm sorry for rambling, by the way. It's difficult to communicate some of these ideas because it's about like design choices and philosophy and stuff. And sometimes that just doesn't gel with people. Okay, so here's a boss fight, right? So I shoot this guy, and I can boost to avoid his fireballs. Okay, so now I'm going to use my teleport to teleport over there so I don't hit the pink laser things. Okay, and now I'm going to teleport over here to get these green boosts, which give me my energy back. So this is actually really, really fun, and I really, really like this, to be honest. It's just not enough of it, you know? There's not enough of it. I get 6 of these, and then the game's over. You know, and I can understand boss fights are hard to do. They're very unique, case-by-case sort of things. But if you'd spread them out, maybe, or you know they were here for the story, but there was another mode, it would have been totally fine. But I love the boss fights actually. Some of them are more difficult than others. This one I think is really well designed. It's just very enjoyable to do. It's mechanically satisfying. You get to use multiple like power-ups and abilities and stuff to get through it. And he's almost dead. Yep. Almost. There we go. Done. So, that's nice, you know? I think it's cool. And so I've unlocked... Oh, it's a planet. They're not zones, they're planets. Right, there you go. And so I've got some experience. Although I shouldn't, because I've already beaten it. Can I repeat content to get more experience? Apparently I can. Okay, I didn't know that. That's interesting. So I'll show you the experience thing. So, the first thing I upgraded was this... field of view slider thing here. Basically, when you first start out the game, you're very, very zoomed in, and it makes it really, really challenging because you can't see corners coming. There's no kind of mini-map or anything, so you don't know what's coming up. And so you're just guessing, and then you see the corner, you turn too late, you hit the wall, you bounce around. So the first thing I did was zoom the camera out because it was really annoying me, to be honest. The second thing I'm working on, and I'll work on it some more, is reactivity. So I don't know if this will actually like address my issue with the lack of precision in controls, but maybe it will. And then you can upgrade the speed of your ship, you can upgrade your weapon so it does a side attack, you can upgrade agility so you can do dodges. That's cool, I'd really like to try that out. Upgrade resilience so you die less fast, you got this extra bar of health. That's really cool. I think it works really well with this sort of mini story mode. So yeah, I mean, look, it's difficult to say. I'm very conflicted on this game. I think it's very good in a number of ways. The art's fantastic, the sound is fantastic, the music's great, the mechanics, all these cool mechanics, they're really, really enjoyable, and I like them a lot. But the controls, which I mean is a fundamental part of what I'm doing here, is racing around. The controls, for me at least, are just not precise enough. I constantly find myself being frustrated because of them. And the difficulty is a barrier to me experiencing the content. And I'm not a fan of that philosophy of design. It's not something I enjoy. And I think a lot of other people won't enjoy it as well. And so that makes the game niche. Whereas if there'd been another mode where you have this mode, and then there was another mode where you could choose difficulty and experience what the game had to offer, and play different maps and get different, you know, cool like rewards and stuff like that, like a traditional racing game, it would have given something to everyone. You know, you could have even left this as difficult as it is and then provided everyone else with optional difficulty modes and being able to just race on whatever maps they want with whatever difficulty AI they want and whatever power-ups and weapons and stuff they want, you know, and customize it or whatever. It could have appealed to a lot more people, and as it stands right now, I feel it's a very niche title geared towards people who specifically like retro races and like really, really challenging games. And you know, that's not everyone on the planet, and that's not really me. And I could have enjoyed this game a lot more if it was a bit different or had more content. So, in conclusion, if you've seen what I've shown you so far and you're really excited by it, go pick it up. Obviously, this is for you. But for everyone else, at its current price of $9.99, I'm finding this hard to recommend with what it currently has in it. If it was $4.99, it would be an easy recommendation. You know, for $4.99, a few hours of fun, maybe you get frustrated, but you haven't lost too much if it doesn't work for you, you know, you're not too good at it or whatever. That's fine. For the final price, which is like $15 when it comes out of early access, the only way I could recommend it is if it had, for example, what I was suggesting, which is that sort of Mario Kart 8 traditional, like, race, have a race, try and progress through a series of maps, you know, multiple difficulty stuff. If it had that as well, it would offer tons of replayability. If it had online or something like that, that would offer even more. That would be even easier to recommend. But as it is now, in its current state, and the developer has stated that he's not going to add much more to this in terms of single-player content, I can't recommend it at $9.99. I really can't. I don't think most people will enjoy this experience. I think they'll do what I did, which was think, this is really cool, get to a point in it where it's too difficult, and then just quit out of frustration, or they'll be really, really good and blast through it really, really fast, and then ask the question, is there any more? So it's really sad to have to not recommend it, because there is a lot that this game does right, and the developer should be commended for creating something that looks and sounds this great on his own, because it really is an achievement. But as it stands right now, I can't recommend it at its current price. If the developer updates it in future with additional content, adds some really deep sort of single-player stuff, then I would easily recommend this game to you. But as it stands right now, I just can't. If you found this review helpful, please comment, like it, subscribe, do all the stuff that people tell you to do at the end of YouTube videos. I will see you next time, guys. Take it easy.